You know the feeling. Someone drains you, yet you keep returning, certain that if you just explain a little louder they will finally hear you. You sense the exhaustion in your chest, the sting behind your eyes, and still you stay because walking away feels like failure. What you miss is that every moment you remain on call, you deposit raw life force into someone else's account and leave your own balance near empty. Imagine your energy as a precise currency. Each thought, gesture, or reply spends a unit, and the universe never issues refunds. Most people treat that currency like loose change scattered on a table. They answer every text in seconds, apologize for invisible crimes, solve problems that never belong to them. The price is subtle at first, slight tension in the shoulders, mild fatigue by nightfall, yet over weeks the bill arrives as a spirit too weary to dream. You have been told that availability equals love. The story says a good friend, partner, or colleague should be accessible at any hour and grateful for the chance to help. That story ignores a deeper principle. Humans treasure what feels rare and undervalue what appears limitless. When you respond instantly, you teach the world that your presence costs nothing. Soon, others behave as though your attention were a public utility, free and endless. Start noticing what changes the moment you pause before reacting. In that brief silence, a transfer of power reverses. The person waiting for your answer begins to feel the weight of expectation instead of you carrying theirs. You did not argue or justify, you simply allowed space and the dynamic rebalanced itself. Silence is not avoidance. It is leverage that reminds both sides your energy is earned, not assumed. There is a quiet transaction beneath every relationship. Connections thrive on mutual respect, yet many slip into a one-sided exchange where your predictability becomes the other person's leverage. They depend on you to soothe, to fix, to cushion every rough edge. At first you call this kindness. Over time it morphs into control because anyone who can predict your reaction can steer your emotions at will. Picture a scenario. A friend lobs a pointed joke that usually makes you defend yourself. This time you stay calm and offer no defense. Without the expected payoff, the script stalls. They are left facing their own discomfort, and you reclaim the energy normally lost in explanation. You just witnessed the difference between connection and programming, between genuine intimacy and a loop designed to keep you supplying emotional labor. Your time is not just hours and minutes, it is the physical vessel of your soul's expansion. Whenever you cancel rest to rescue someone from a chaos they generated, you convert priceless inner resources into fleeting external relief. They feel lighter, you feel hollow. Multiply that exchange by months, and you breed chronic depletion disguised as martyrdom. High-frequency states such as clarity and joy lower into guilt and resentment each time you override your own need for calm. Culture rarely questions this pattern because an always-on version of you is convenient. Yet the electricity that powers constant usefulness comes from somewhere, and that somewhere is your nervous system. Forced yes, recalibrate your frequency downward until you attract ever more people comfortable with a boundaryless version of you. The cycle self-perpetuates. You give to prove worth, they take because you offer, and both sides forget what genuine reciprocity feels like. Here is the spiritual trap. You start confusing depletion with love, believing that if you feel exhausted you must be doing the right thing. True service never demands the fracture of your alignment. When you feel a subtle fracture, tight breath, sinking gut, that is your field warning you. Chronic imbalance then manifests as burnout, apathy, or mysterious aches, physical signals that your spirit no longer consents to the bargain. You do not owe extensive explanations for guarding your peace. A boundary is permission you give yourself, not a request to be debated. Lowering your vibration just to match someone's dysfunction does not heal them. It simply confirms the dysfunction as normal. Your limited lifetime will not stretch because you kept everyone else comfortable. Instead, each resentful hour erodes the reality you claim to value. Ask different questions. Instead of, will they still accept me if I refuse? Try, will I respect myself if I continue? Every agreement that demands shrinking chips away at the self you are meant to become. Expansion is impossible while you pretend endless capacity. Midway through life you may realize the ache you call purpose is just the echo of possibilities you postpone to stay indispensable. Indispensable people are loved for function, not essence. The warmth you feel when arriving with solutions is real, yet it sits atop a hollow core. They embrace the service, not the soul. Over years you perfect the role until even you forget what lives behind the competence. The performance becomes a prison. You wonder why nobody asks about your dreams, but you train them not to when you disguise needs beneath flawless output. Useful masks originate not from manipulation but protection. They form when authenticity meets rejection and learns to hide. Predictable helpfulness earns approval that true vulnerability did not. Meanwhile, parts of you, bitterness, fatigue, unmet desires, retreat underground, gathering strength. Continued self-erasure invites shadow to surface through passive aggression or sudden rage, proof that suppressed needs never disappear. They accumulate interest. Energy follows focus. When your bandwidth disperses into micro-rescues, your own signal weakens. You struggle to locate yourself in your own life. Surrounded by contacts, you feel isolated because they bond to utility, not substance. Fear keeps you in place. Fear of disappointing, of being average, of invisibility once the hero act ends. Ironically, clinging to usefulness guarantees abandonment, for only the mask remains visible while your essence fades from view. Wake-up moments often arrive when overreaction drains you more than the issue deserved. A petty online exchange leaves you dizzy, a long text battle erases your morning, and you notice the pattern. Reactivity equals power leakage. Every impulsive defense funds a conflict economy that never issues receipts. You can win the debate yet lose vitality, because energy granted without purpose never returns. Emotions are literal charge. Each reaction purchases either alignment or fatigue. Emotional discipline is not emotional coldness. It is choosing where the currency lands. Some dialogues are voids that swallow any offered light. Silence here is conservation. It denies harvesters the energy they hope to trigger and keeps your field intact for endeavors that matter. Triggers are teachers, not threats. They reveal tender scars programmed long ago. The jab that spikes your heart shows where autonomy still wavers. Retreat from reactive loops and observe the sensation instead of amplifying it. In the pause, you separate present stimulus from historical wound, reclaiming choice over conditioned reflex. Sovereignty means feeling everything while deciding what deserves outward expression. Projection complicates everything. People often see only reflections of their own unhealed stories. If you stay adaptive, you become the perfect screen for those projections. When you shift, saying no, moving slower, the projector flickers. Accusations of selfishness or change arise because you broke the illusion. Let them. Misinterpretation is inevitable when others converse with their fantasy, not your reality. Manipulative systems reward compliance and punish authenticity. Affection flows when you play the savior, freezes when you prioritize yourself. That freeze is evidence, not condemnation. It proves the bond was conditional. Do not trade wholeness for a seat at that table. Step away, and notice how clarity replaces confusion once the emotional fog clears. Silence unsettles controllers because their strategy needs your reaction. Without your participation, their narrative stalls. This is not withdrawal, it is reclamation. In stillness you watch patterns expose themselves. You see incongruities between word and deed, between apology and repeated harm. Observation replaces defense, granting insight and conserving life force. Not every truth deserves broadcast. Sharing to those who twist your meaning drains more than it heals. Reserve depth for listeners who respond with respect. Where curiosity is absent, silence protects. Awareness without embodiment is another hiding place. A plan to set boundaries has no power until lived. Begin with micro-acts. Let the phone buzz without guilt, decline the invitation kindly, honor the evening your body requested. Sacred isolation becomes essential. Step away from the noise to remember your interior tone. Early solitude feels awkward. Remain anyway. Soon, calm emerges and you realize peace was never missing, only buried under incessant performance. From this space, choices align with authenticity rather than obligation. You sense which connections nourish and which consume. Chaos once mistaken for intimacy now reads as instability, and distance feels like clarity, not loss. As you withdraw from draining loops, a quiet power returns. It colors your posture, your pacing, your refusal to apologize for existing. This is rebirth through subtraction. Each no excavates the real self beneath layers of duty. Expansion follows truth, not hustle. The new frequency attracts relationships that welcome silence, celebrate rest, and honor boundaries. Those unable to adapt drift away, freeing room for those who can. Rebuilding yourself starts with a commitment that no one else will notice at first. You decide to treat every trigger as a doorway, not a command, pausing long enough to breathe deliberately. 3 slow inhales recalibrate the nervous system. On the exhale, you observe thoughts without letting them pilot. That gap between impulse and response becomes a workshop where new habits form quietly but decisively. Soon you notice familiar provocations losing their grip. A certain tone that once launched you into defense now lands against calm interior walls. You acknowledge the emotion yet decline the performance, preserving vitality for pursuits aligned with vision rather than injury. Each victory, however small, teaches the body safety without needing external approval for evidence. Silence grows from awkward to effortless. It evolves into a discerning filter that reveals who values presence over spectacle. Some people lean closer, intrigued by the steadiness. Others retreat, unsettled by the lost leverage. Both reactions serve you, clarifying which connections thrive when drama subsides and authenticity stands unguarded. You cultivate an inventory of focus, asking whether a conversation feeds growth or siphons spirit. If the topic cycles in circles, you exit kindly, refusing to spend emotional currency on predictable chaos. If discourse sharpens perspective or stretches compassion, you invest attention fully, knowing the return outweighs the cost. This selective engagement reverses years of automatic compliance, and your energy field thickens with refreshed coherence. The more you embody boundaries, the less explanation you require. A simple statement of limits, voiced once and upheld consistently, speaks louder than essays of justification. Resistance from others becomes data, not drama, showing who respects your sovereignty and who worships convenience. You stop arguing with data, choosing instead to adjust distance until respect matches the intimacy offered. Evenings that were once overbooked with obligations transform into deliberate restoration. You reclaim creative projects, long walks, unscheduled solitude that reawakens forgotten curiosities. Ideas rise unhurried because mental bandwidth is no longer hijacked by endless problem-solving for others. Joy regains access to your schedule, arriving without guilt, and inspiration follows closely behind. Physical signals begin to shift as well. Sleep deepens because unresolved tension no longer loops through midnight rehearsals of imaginary dialogues. Breath settles lower in the belly, reminding the heart that safety can be self-generated. The immune system thanks you quietly, turning reclaimed energy into healing instead of hypervigilance. Old identities periodically knock, testing commitment. They whisper that usefulness equates to love, that silence risks abandonment, that boundaries equal betrayal. You greet those echoes with compassion, remembering they once kept you safe, then guide them to the door. Their departure creates room for a truer sense of worth, rooted in presence rather than performance. New relationships form on unfamiliar terrain. Curiosity instead of expectation, reciprocity instead of extraction. People who resonate with your steadiness appreciate pauses, respect no, celebrate individuality free from transactional roles. Conversation feels lighter because mutual accountability replaces hidden scorecards. You recognize this as genuine intimacy, where both sides expand instead of one shrinking to fit the other's comfort. Opportunities arrive that match the upgraded frequency. Projects align with passion rather than obligation. Collaborations respect pacing rather than demand constant urgency. You notice prosperity follows clarity. Doors that drained energy close, while those that promise growth swing open easily. This is not cosmic favoritism. It is the natural magnetism of an undiluted signal finally broadcasting without static. Challenges still surface, yet your response pattern has evolved. Instead of catastrophizing, you assess what belongs to you and what belongs to others. You act where responsibility is yours, release where it is not, conserving strength for purposeful action. Stress no longer accumulates unchecked. It cycles through, processed by mindful practices you now honor daily. Grief occasionally rises for versions of you that hustled for belonging. You allow sadness its rightful passage, recognizing it as proof of growth, not evidence of failure. Tears fall without drowning resolve. They water the soil of new identity, ensuring roots deepen with honesty. After each release, gratitude surfaces for lessons learned and clarity gained through difficult departures. Mentors appear in unexpected places, sometimes a book line, sometimes a stranger's passing remark. They mirror back the sovereignty you practice, reminding you transformation does not isolate, it realigns community. You reciprocate by sharing insight selectively, offering seeds rather than forcing gardens, trusting each soul's timing. Service becomes more potent because it flows from overflow, not depletion, embodying abundance instead of sacrifice. As months pass, the distinction between authenticity and utility stays vivid. You refuse invitations that require shrinking, accept those that honor wholeness, letting calendar entries reveal priorities. Each decisive choice strengthens inner authority, making future boundaries feel less like walls and more like clear signage. Life organizes around sovereignty, proving that aligned frequency structures external reality as surely as internal terrain. One evening you scroll through old conversations saved on your phone. You see paragraph upon paragraph of over-explaining, jokes defusing tension, apologies for taking up space. A quiet smile spreads because those screenshots feel like relics, artifacts of a self that survived by constant agreement. You honor that version with thanks, then archive the threads, clearing digital clutter to match the mental. Now, when a new message pings after midnight, you let it rest until morning without anxiety. When an online debate demands immediate allegiance, you scroll past, investing attention in sources that nourish discernment. When family nostalgia pressures you to override boundaries, you respond with warmth and firmness, proving both can coexist. These micro-practices anchor a macro belief. Your energy is sacred and stewardship of it is non-negotiable. Isolation transforms into integration. You re-enter community carrying authenticity rather than compliance. Some individuals drift away, unable to adapt to the unmasked frequency. You release them with peace. Others deepen connection, thrilled by the invitation to meet you beyond roles. You welcome them with gratitude. Either outcome affirms that clarity is not cruelty but kindness, first to self and then to all honest companions. Eventually, someone asks how you changed so visibly without dramatic announcements. You answer softly that most revolutions begin in silent rooms. One slow breath, one withheld reaction, one new boundary. They nod, curious, sensing permission to attempt the same, and you offer encouragement rather than instruction. Transformation, you explain, is personal geometry. Each person must calculate their own angles of subtraction and expansion. To support those ready, you share weekly reflections, concise letters exploring presence, boundaries, and energetic economy. Readers reply describing lighter chests, calmer minds, friendships reshaped by mutual respect. The cycle of empowered exchange replaces old dynamics of depletion, demonstrating collective healing through individual sovereignty. You invite anyone resonating with this journey to join, emphasizing that investment is attention, not performance.